are loving it. Yeah, I really enjoy it. For those of you who've been coming to my webinars, you'll know that I've been, working in it for a few months now. I was able to get the beta version of it. I enjoy it a lot because it is very similar to a lot of the other bigger graphic design programs, Adobe, Corel, with the layout and the design of it. I think the most confusing part for me was just switching. So I do 4.0 to set stuff up, but I've been teaching my webinars and trainings in 3.0 still because that was the public version. And then I also make your designs for the webinar in Corel as well as other designs that go on the website. So for me, it's just been confusing switching between everything that we have. But as far as 4.0 goes, I really like it. I know that there are a few bugs with it still. For example, one thing that I sent into them was that my custom cut settings for glitter, we're doing a double cut. For Easy Weed, we're doing a double cut even if I don't have it set in my settings. So just make sure if you are getting stuff like that, you give Silhouette feedback. That's how they fix all these problems. Okay, so how many of you, I recognize the majority of names, but is there anyone in here this is like maybe your first or second webinar? And I know several of you have been to a lot of my webinars. How many webinars have you been to? Like 1, 2, 40? What would you say is the number for the amount of webinars that you've been to? This is Sissy's second. Well, welcome. I'm glad you came back. Debbie, 10 or more. Yeah, that sounds about right. And Jessica, 5 to 8. And I think, Jessica, you're coming to in-house training. So we're excited about that. In-house training will be next month. So we're really looking forward to that. Cool. I know, I can't wait either, Jessica. Alright, so I'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who are still unfamiliar with how webinars work, I can see your questions coming through as you type them. If you have any questions on anything, just go ahead and type it. I'll see it. I'll answer it as soon as I can. I always like to answer questions right when it's relevant. And even if you have feedback, I like that. Oh, I wouldn't do it that way. Oh, that's cute. I love seeing what you say. That way I'm not talking to myself for an hour. And I love interacting with you guys. So if you have any questions or comments while I do this, please type it in there. I would love to be able to answer them right away. All right. So today's webinar is an intermediate webinar. So what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to assume you know some of the basic functions of Silhouette Studio. I will explain them as I go in case you are more on the beginner side. But if you do have questions, feel free to ask them. It's really not a big deal. I do have the written guide in there for you, so you can follow along with that, or you can just watch for now and read back through the guide as I go. I try to explain as much as I can in the guide as well, so that it's easy for you to replicate these designs or do something similar after the fact. So it will probably be more on the upper end of intermediate for you guys for this webinar, only because we are working in a new version of Silhouette Studio now. So we're going to kind of have to get used to where things are set up and how they're grouped in the software, and a couple just design differences that happen throughout this update. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to do our first design, which is the love heart design. So if you saw the preview image when you signed up for the webinar, this is the love with a heart with rhinestones inside of it and then a rhinestone border. So the first part that we need to do is we need to set up the text for our design. So we're going to go over here to our text tool on the left side. So you'll notice that the panels are a lot different, but some of the areas or locations are the same, and this happens to be one of them. So let's click on text. We'll type in here, and now we're going to type out what we're going to do. So I'm going to do love in all capital letters, and then I'm going to do Control A to select all my text inside of here. Okay? Now, you'll notice that this top bar looks different, right? So one update that they put in Silhouette Studio is that they improved this bar up here, that they'll give you the most common commands that come with whatever type of object you have selected. So if you have text up there, it's going to give you the text panel. If you have 2 or more objects, it's going to give you things like modify and align, fun stuff like that. So it's cool. It's very intuitive, and it kind of helps speed up your process. So we're going to go right here, and we're going to type out a big, bold font for this. I like to use an athletic font, so I'm going to use one called Freshman. It's very similar to our athletic font that we have on our website. And I'm just going to bring this up and scale it up a little bit. Now, I want to fill this in. Typically, you would go to your fill panel, choose a color. I can go right here to this top bar here with this fill. I'm just going to go ahead and fill it in like that. So we're saving time already with this top bar in version 4.0, which I really love. Now, what we need to do is we need to break apart this text. We need to turn them into objects, and we need to ungroup them. So we're going to click on the text here. We're going to right click, and we're going to convert it to path. Now, the reason why we do this is right now we need to take our text and we need to say, okay, make these objects. So when we have letters together in text, when we start off, we have letters that are in a group that make a word, okay? So now we've taken this group of letters and we've turned them to a group of objects. Now what we need to do is we need to right click on this and ungroup the objects. So now we have little boxes around each one of these. Now you can take away this O, delete, and now we're going to leave our text like this. Now we will group these letters together once we get further along in designing, but we want to leave them separate for now so we can adjust for the heart that goes in here. So now you need to bring in a heart file. I'm going to grab one from my library. You can also trace one from, a search online. So I'm going to go right here. Let's go to my user designs. I get a lot of processing. I moved from the cloud. I moved stuff onto the cloud so you can see that I have a lot of duplicates in here. Eventually I'll clean it out, but not today. So let's grab this heart. There we go. I'm going to select the heart, make a copy, and I'm going to bring it over to my first workspace here. So I'm going to do Control V, paste, and now we're going to position it on here. Now if you notice the line around my heart is white, I'm going to go ahead and change my line color to make it easier to see my offsets once I do them. So I'm going to go over here, change my line color right here to red, and now we have a red line around our heart. So now we're going to position this over here, and I want my text to be a little bit closer to here, so I'm going to bring my heart like this, and maybe shrink it just a little bit. And then I'm going to take these letters and use my little arrows to nudge them over. Now when you're doing this, just make sure that your text is underneath your heart. So let's say you set up this design yourself and you found a heart that you liked first and you typed after. If that's the case, you just take your heart, right click, bring to front. Right, so we have it set up like that. And now we can take our text right here and we're going to group it right back together. So I'm going to hold down Shift, click on this, and this, and now we can group it together, or I'm going to do something called make it a compound path. And I'm actually going to open up a program real quick for you guys so you can see my keystrokes. Hold on one second and I'm going to get this set up for you. Hold on. Oh no, not that one. Oh, we're just going to do it this way. So we have our key press. Hold on one second. Let me go right here real quick. There you go. There we go. Okay, so now you can see when I do shortcuts. So I'm going to grab this, hold down Shift, grab these letters, and then I'm going to do Control E and make this a compound path. Now this is different than grouping it because what this is doing is telling Silhouette Studio that all of these letters make one complex object or compound path. That helps when we do our modify because Silhouette's picky about how many number of objects we have in there. So when we make something like this a compound path, it is technically one object in the software here. Now we need to make some space between our heart and our text. So I'm going to click on my heart and we're going to go over to our offset panel. Now the cool thing about Silhouette Studio now is you can get to these commands multiple ways. We put a lot of stuff in the top panel so that it's easier for you to get to. So you can see I have this object selected and one of the immediate options is to go make an offset. So we're going to go offset And you can see it defaults to 0.125. I'm going to go ahead and change my distance. I want it to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to make my offset be 0.08. Hit apply. And then hit apply. So we have it set like this. So now we have our little offset around my heart, but on top of my text. So I can hold down Shift, grab my text, and so now I have both selected, my offset and my text. Now we have the option to weld up here, but that's not what we want to do. So we want to actually go to our modify panel now in Silhouette Studio. So here's our modify panel. You'll notice it's a little bit different. Version 3.0 has a square and a circle with an M inside of it. Now it just has one of the icons for one of the commands. So let's take both of these, hit subtract, and now you can see that we have a little space between our heart and our letters, but you can see that our letters are separated again, and that's because we went and we took our text below it and we cut it up. So if you have a piece of paper and you cut it in half, you have 2 pieces of paper after, right? So it's the same concept that applies for the text here. So we need to just go ahead and make this a compound path. We need to make it an object together. So let's do Control E, and now we have that all set. All right, so now we can go ahead and we need to start making our lines off the inside of our heart now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to double check the width of my design. It's a lot easier if you have it set about to what you want it to be before you do the rhinestone part. The great thing about Silhouette Studio is that once you scale it up or down, it does fill in more rhinestones for you to make it easier. But I always like to start it off that way so I don't have to worry about editing after. So we have this set right here. And now we're going to go back to our offset panel. So let's click on our heart, go to the offset panel right here. And now we want to do internal offsets. So the outside shape of this heart is what we're keeping. We're now modifying the inside of what we're doing. So let's do internal offset. And we're going to make our distance 0.125. So that's good. So here's our first line. Now we want to make some more offsets. And right now our first offset is still selected. So if I press offset again, then it's going to make one off of that line. So let's do internal offset, and we're going to set our distance to 0.09. So let's bring this down, and let's type 0.09. Apply. So you can see here's our 0.09 in here. And then we want one more, and we're going to do this 0.160. So this is what's happening. My first offset will be the inside part of that heart. The heart's going to turn into a ring. So then my second offset is the line that my rhinestones are coming off of. And now my third offset that we're creating now is for another row of rhinestones that we're adding on. So you want 0.160-ish between 2 rows of rhinestones, but because my first row of rhinestones is up against vinyl, I do half the distance because the rhinestones are going on the middle of the line. So if you have a line of rhinestones, it's going to go here and here. So if you have a line of rhinestones next to a vector, well, the vector line ends and your rhinestones can go here. But if you have 2 rows of rhinestones together, then you have extra rhinestones here and extra rhinestones here on the line. So you have to factor in more space if you're doing 2 rows of rhinestones together. Hopefully that makes sense. And so we're going to do one more internal offset. So if we did 0.09 before, now we're going to do 0.160. Hit enter, then apply. So if you check it out, you can see now we have all of our 3 lines. You have 1, 2, 3. So this one right here is going to work with our outside shape to make it into a ring. So I'm going to drag my mouse down, 1, 2. So there's my first offset. Let's do Control E. Now it's a ring. All right. So here comes the converting part. So we're going to click on this row of rhinestones. Go to our rhinestone panel, which is down here towards the bottom of our right side panel. And now you can see it looks different, but the functions are the same. They've taken away a lot of the text, but everything that you're used to is still there. So let's go right here. This is our edge fill. Now we have our edge of rhinestones here, and I can fill this in to make it easier. So we have 1. Click on here, 2 edge. Now we have 2. All right, so you can see that the rhinestones are close together, but they're not overlapping. Now, if I were to do both offsets at 0.09, then this line of rhinestones would have overlapped that top one. Okay, so we have our rhinestones all set. You can see that the fill looks pretty good. I have noticed in 4.0 recently with the update, sometimes the rhinestone fills can be uneven. You can fix that by double clicking on it. Sometimes it'll respace itself. If push comes to shove, you may have to move a couple stones around yourself, but overall the fills are still really nice. They work out well. Okay, so now we're going to take our whole design. This part of it is all done, and we're going to do Control G and group it together. And the reason why we're doing Control G and not Control E is that because we have multiple objects in here, we just want them to change together. So check this out. You see that? It did one of those. It messed with my stones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my heart, hold Shift, and grab the outside, and do Control G with that. Sometimes there's a weird quirk with rhinestone files that if you group them, it shifts them for some reason. You can fix it if you want by releasing the rhinestones first and then grouping it together, but I'm just going to leave it like this for what we're doing. So now we want to do a border around our whole design. So a border is really easy. We're basically doing an offset and then doing an edge fill. So let's go over here. Let's go to our offset panel and check this out. We can have both panels open right away. So we can offset and rhinestone, no problem. So let's do offset. And then I want these rhinestones to be close to my design. So I'm actually going to decrease my spacing a bit. I'm going to put my rhinestone distance to 0.10 or 0.100, whatever, and then hit apply. So now we have this rhinestone offset around there, and then we can go over here and actually let me go back real quick. So we're going to make our distance actually 0.09. Actually, let me see what I want. Oh yeah, 0.10 is fine. Hit apply. And now check this out. We have an inside section with here. So we need to do a little bit of adjusting with our design. We don't want stones to be right here. So we're going to go over here, release compound path, and then we can go right here and delete these inside lines. So now we have just our outline here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this part here and point edit it just a little bit to get rid of those extra points. So I'm going to double click, hold down Shift, grab these points, press, oh, I always forget about that, delete point. So now we have a little bit of a cleaner line with this. And then let's delete that point. So we have that set. And then we're just going to repeat the process. And then delete point. And then let's go right here and delete this point. So we're not super worried about how smooth that line is because it's going to be converted over to rhinestones. So we're not worrying about how it's going to cut. So let's bring this back around our design. And I'm just going to use my arrow keys to nudge it. All right, so we have it right here. And here's one thing that happens with Silhouette Studio. When these panels open, they don't go away until you close them. So I'm just going to go ahead and close some of these. And then go to my rhinestone panel, and then we're just going to choose Edge. And now we have our rhinestone outline all set. I can fill it in to make it easier to see. And here's our design. So let me zoom in. So we have this cute multi-deck design. We're able to do rhinestones on the inside, but also the outside of our design as well. So a nice little look that we have going with this. What do you think? Do you guys have any questions on that? Do you want me to repeat any of the steps maybe? Good? Cool. Offsets are really, really cool. They can get a lot done with your design, and they can give you cool effects with it just by doing an offset. So I really enjoy it. Now this one is going to be grouped together with the next design in your downloads. So those are already done. They're all set for you. You can get off this webinar and make something right after. All right. Do you need me to repeat anything, or are you ready for the next design? Okay. So this design was our warm-up. Now we're going to get pretty hardcore with this. So we're going to do this design here. So we're making 2 patterns, 1, 2, and we're also doing a rhinestone border. All right? And this requires no tracing. Okay, so I'm going to do this next design, and it's going to start off with a font called State Face. All right, it's a commercial-free font. I got it from fontsquirrel.com, and it's one of those WebDing fonts where you can just type a bunch of stuff and they're different shapes. So if you do the letter Z, and we're going to go over here, take our letter, change the font, State Face. Now we have our United States. No tracing, it's already set. Now if you look at it, this is a pretty accurate picture of the United States. So places like this, like that's going to be a nightmare to cut and weed if you can get it done. So we're going to make some adjustments to this to smooth out corners to make it easier on us to do the production side. So right here, the first thing that we're going to do is we need to convert this over to an object instead of text. So if you look at it, this box around here is really big. You see that? It's not even close to the size of our United States. So we need, first of all, to convert this from an text to an object. So we're going to go right here, right click, make compound path. So now I can see it's closer. So we are doing what we talked about earlier, where we took this with a bunch of lines and shapes and told it, okay, this is a complex shape. So let's right click again and release compound path. Now every set of lines in there are separated. You can have them, you can delete them. So what I want is I only want the shape, the main shape of the United States. So when we have a bunch of stuff selected like this, you can hold down Shift and click on one thing to deselect it. So if I hold down Shift and click on the United States, now the only things selected are all these little islands and lakes and everything like that. So I can press delete, and now all that extra stuff is gone. So now what I need to do is I need to smooth it out using an offset. Now I want my design to be the same shape, but I just want it to be smoother. So instead of going in and point editing and adjusting all the little points in there, we're going to do a little shortcut. So let's select our shape, go to offset, click on offset here, and then we're going to do an offset of 0.10, enter, then apply. All right, so here's our first offset, 0.10. So you can see that this line outside the shape is smoothed out, right? But one of the problems is that we lose some of the definition with it, okay? See that compared to this little United States? So now what we need to do is we need to bring in the offset to make it closer to the shape that it was. This is almost like a bloated United States. So let's go to internal offset. Then we're putting a distance of 0.10. Hit apply. Now check this out. Here's the first offset we made. Here's the second, okay? So you can see it's smoother, but it still is distinguishable, right? So let's go ahead, get rid of this one, get rid of this one, and then we got a little lake left over in here. So let's right click, release compound path, and then delete this little guy in here. All right, so let's color this in. We got our our United States to start. So we're all good. And we didn't have to trace anything. We didn't have to do point editing. We just had to do 2 offsets and we were all good there. So now we need to set up our United States to have our rhinestones and to have our offset to knock out from behind the pattern. So if you look at this, you'll see I have my United States, I have a line of rhinestones, and then I have the design. So you need to make space for both of those. So just like we did before, we're going to go to offset. So this first one is meant for our rhinestones. So we're going to put in a distance of 0.09, hit enter, and then apply. So there's our first one. Now you guys know the offset is still selected from me just making it. So I'm going to do one more offset. I'm going to click on offset. And now for this one, what's different between the design we just did and the design we're doing now is that we only have one line of rhinestones, which means we don't have to worry about the other edge of rhinestones getting in the way of this line that we're converting. So we can set our offset to be closer to make it a smaller space between the rhinestones and the vector. So let's go back, change this to 0.09, hit apply. So now you can see we have our two lines here, and they're pretty evenly spaced, okay? So we have that all set. I'm going to take my cursor, grab both of these, and I'm going to move it to the side. I'm done with this part of the design. I need to set up the next part so I can combine them all. So let's bring this over, and now we need to make the stripes. So let's go over to our rectangle tool. Now, for those of you who are using 4.0 now, you'll see that it has nested the shapes in here, right? So if you don't see the rectangle tool, just hover over it and it'll show you the other shapes. Maybe you drew a circle recently and it defaulted to that. So let's go to our rectangle tool, and we want to draw a long skinny line. These are our stripes, okay? So we have our stripe here, and now we want to make duplicates of this. So a fun way, an easy way to make duplicates of something is you hold down the Alt button and see that little plus sign that shows up. I'm going to hover over plus sign, click and drag, and make a bunch of copies. So you just want to make a bunch of copies so that you can create stripes with this. So now I'm going to bring this up a little bit, and I'm going to highlight my whole design. So what I need to do now is I need to fix the spacing between all of the lines on here, okay? You can see it's not even, like even in the slightest. So we're going to go over here, go to the transform panel, which used to be the align panel. You can see these little icons here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to press vertical right here. What this does is it takes the first shape here and the bottom shape here, and it respaces everything in between to make it even. So let's go right here, click on vertical, and then you can see it's a little bit uneven. So let's go right here to horizontal and make them centered on there. And I'm going to fill these in so we can see it easier. So what we're looking for is basically the lines and the spacing to be about the same. So I'm actually going to take this line, bring it up a little bit more, and repeat the process. Do vertical spacing. Okay, so we have it all set like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to group this together, and now we're going to take our United States and our offsets and bring this over. So now you can see that this is below our lines because we drew it first. No big deal. We're going to take our lines, right click, send to back, and now we have our United States and our offsets on top, okay? So one thing to look out for is that our offset is going to knock out from what's behind. And so this offset up here is not touching a line. So I'm actually going to bring my line down a little bit so that it defines where it comes out. So look right here. This line is within a line, and then there's a little bit that hangs off, but not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. And actually, I'm going to bring it up so I have an additional line up there. We're just going to do it this way. So what you could do is you could increase the spacing, not a big deal. I'm just going to go ahead, use my arrow keys, move this over. And now these lines are going to stay in my design. So some of these down here I don't need, so I'm just going to right click, ungroup, and then delete those 3 lines. Use my cursor, grab just the blue on this side, group it together, do Control E, make it a compound path. So now we're ready to do more modifications. So let's zoom in so we can see a little bit better. Now I need to make space between my United States and my background so that my line of rhinestones can be in there. So let's click on our outside offset, hold down Shift and click on the stripes. So now we have both of these selected, and you can see we have more options that show up here, but not the one that we need. So we need to go over here to the Modify panel right here, click on Subtract, and so now we see we have space in between my United States and the lines, okay? And just like before, we had the background is broken up because we cut it. So we're going to keep it all selected and do Control E. And now it's one object again. All right, so let's grab our line for the rhinestones here. Let's get out of here. Go back to the rhinestone panel. and then convert that over to edge. All right, so we have this right here. Let's fill it in so we can see it easier. So look at this. We have an okay fill, but it needs to be adjusted in some areas. So we're going to go right here, and we need to ungroup them. So let's release rhinestones. And now you can edit each rhinestone individually. So let's go up here. Let's look at these. And I'm going to go over here, and we're just going to kind of like nudge them. So let's bring this rhinestone right here. And then Alt key, bring this like that. And then we're just going to adjust the spacing to make it a little bit more even. So we can see right here, I can bring this rhinestone up, and bring this one up, this one, and that makes space for another rhinestone. So let's do this, and I actually don't want my rhinestones to go that far into this design, so I'm just going to kind of adjust it like that. Let's adjust this like that, and we can probably fit one right here, maybe. So let's go ahead, move these around. And now we have another rhinestone there. So you want to keep doing this just to fix the spacing in here. Now, don't forget when you do something like this, like, yeah, you might spend 5 or 10 minutes adjusting the rhinestones here, but don't forget that you cut this template one time. So you don't have to weed it again and again. You can quickly brush in your stones and have it set like this. So when you're doing something with rhinestones, definitely take your time to adjust your rhinestones to have your spacing the way you want it and the way it looks good, because this, you know, is like one step that you only have to do one time. So you want to make it count. So let's go right here. Let's bring this over. Let's bring this over. And oops, that's a center of rotation. Let's grab that. And I noticed when I updated to 4.0, my center of rotation didn't show up by default. If you can't use it, like if you need it for a replicate or something like that, go into your settings and make sure you have center of rotation turned on or off, depending on what you want. So let's go right here. Let's bring this stone down. And now I can do Alt, make a duplicate, slap that right there. Good. And now we're just going to adjust on Florida. So let's bring this over. Do a duplicate here. So we have that all set, and we can actually, oops, not that close. We can actually take our rhinestones, bring them over a little bit more, and then do one more right here. And then you would just continue on. I think I got the majority of it. I'm just going to leave it like that just so we can move on to the next part. Okay, so one thing that we want to do is all of our rhinestones are separate right now, right? So we want to make sure to group them together. So we're going to go right here. This is select by color, okay? This button right here. So it used to be in the panel like right around here. Now they brought it up and they made it that little palette or paint tray. I don't know what it's called, but they made it one of those. So we'll go by fill. And so now our rhinestones are this light blue color. We'll just go choose all this light blue. And then Control G, group that together really quick. Oh, click in here, Control G, and bring that over. Now that reminds me of something. Do any of you work in the Wizard, Design Wizard? Let me know if any of you use that. Because what just happened is something that happens in the Wizard a lot. So if you are moving up to the Wizard, you'll already be ahead of the game with something like that. So if you work in the Wizard and you make a change with it, you'll notice that if you click in the Wizard, make a change, and you want to go back, if you do Control Z right away, nothing happens. Because technically you're working in this window here and not this one where your design is in. So watch this bar. When I click on Select by Color, that bar turns white because it's like a new window inside of it. So if you do something, you know, you select by color and then you want to group it right away, just make sure you're clicking right in here before you do Control G so that you know you're working in the right workspace for that, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so we have this part done. All we need to do is set up the pattern for inside of this design. So we're going to make a copy of this. So Alt, +, drag this down. And then let's get this out of the way because we're not going to need it for a few minutes. And move this out of the way. So now we need to set up stars. You can grab one from your library. You can find one online. It doesn't matter. I'm going to grab a star from my library. Right here. Here's my star. Copy. Let's bring it back over here. Paste. So just like before, I need to make a pattern. So I'm going to scale this down because it's way too big. And we're going to take it, do the Alt key, click, 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 make enough to make a row. Let's grab all of these. Let's go to the Transform panel. Let's space horizontally. So look, you can see that they're a little bit close together. Just going to take this one, stretch it out, and then repeat the process. And I actually want them a little bit further. So let's do that. Space horizontally. And then we'll right here, vertical, center it. Now you can increase or decrease the spacing however you like. I like it this way, so I'm going to leave it like that. So let's highlight all of these stars. Control E, make it a compound path. And now we're going to go right here to the replicate panel. Here's a replicate panel. We're going to duplicate below. So now we have a copy below. You can see it gave it a little bit of spacing, but what makes this more realistic is that the stars on the flag are staggered. So I'm going to use my arrows. Oh, see, look, it happened. It's in that window. Use my arrows. Bring this over. So now I have this in the center of my row here. Let's highlight both of these. Do Control E. And now duplicate below. Just the same way. Do it one more time. Maybe one more time just to be safe. Now we'll take our whole design, do Control E, and now this is one big complex shape. You can see from when I double click, that's what we get. So we're going to take this, and now what we want is for our stripes, we want a very small border on the outside of our United States to define the shape when we knock out the stars. So if you notice, right here, there's a line there. So you want that to make sure you can keep the definition of your state. So we're going to take this and we're going to do an internal offset. So let's go to our offset panel, internal offset, and we're going to do a distance of 0.08, enter, and then apply. So there's our internal offset. It didn't show up very well because it's a red line. So it has a little straggler here. I don't know if you can see it. But this thing happened. I don't know what that is. So we're going to go to point editing mode, zoom in, and I'm just going to delete these points. Delete, 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 delete. Okay, so we have those points deleted. We're just using this to get the pattern, so it's not a big deal that it's not perfect like that. So let's go over here. Let's change the color. And then we want to right click, bring this to front. Actually, I want to bring it to back, I'm sorry. So I'm going to send this to back, and now we're going to position our stars onto this shape. So let's go ahead, take these, I'm going to decrease it a little bit, find a good space with here. So what I'm looking for is I'm just making sure that nowhere in this country has a little teeny tiny microscopic piece of a star in it. We can delete it after the fact, but I want to try to avoid that. So I'm going to take all of these, and I'm actually going to make a duplicate for you just so I can show you something else. So let's go over here, Alt, bring that down, and here's a duplicate. So let's grab both of these, and now we want to knock out from the United States where these stars are. So we're going to go to our Modify panel right here, and we're going to choose Subtract. So let's go right here, click on Subtract. So now you can see we have all these spaces where the stars got taken out. And we have one little teeny tiny piece here that I want to get rid of. Delete. Now let's grab this whole thing. Do Control E, make it a compound path. And now we want to set this up on our design over here. So I'm going to bring this back and then right click on this, bring it to the front. And now we're going to set this up on our design. So don't forget, this is made from an internal offset of this shape. So you want a border around this whole thing, okay? So let's zoom in. So now you have the star, the blue, and the red. So let's hold down Shift, click on the red, click on the blue. You can see right here, we have two little gray lines. That means we have two objects selected. Now, some people would say, okay, I'm going to subtract it out of there, but we're actually not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to take this, and actually, before I go too far, I'm going to make a copy of this background so I can show you another effect you can do. So we're going to take this, hold down Shift, get that, do Control E, check that out. So we have this set up just like that. So you'll notice this looks a little bit different than my shirt, right? It's all a matter if you do a crop or a subtract. So let me show you one more. So I'm going to grab both of these. Instead of subtracting, I'm going to crop it. Now we have all my little stars here. I'm just going to do Control E just for now. And then bring this to the back. Let's select both of these. Go to my line panel. Center them on each other. And then you can see mine's a little bit off. Sometimes that happens when you do an internal offset, so you just want to use your arrows to fix it. Let's grab both of these, Control E. So check that out. Now we have this. Now it's just all a matter of if you crop or subtract or what shape you put on top of the other. So I think when I originally made this in the notes, I put the United States on top, now that I think about it. Okay, yeah, so I put the United States behind, and then I did a subtract. So I just have to adjust that. I actually did a crop. So we have it like that. So let me write this down. I'm going to do crop. So I'm going to re-upload your guide with this change. So let's go right here. And all we have to do now is change our colors. So we'll do our United States blue. Let's do our stripes in red. And then we can just bring this up and position this right inside our line of rhinestones. Okay? Did you guys have any questions on that? Do you want me to repeat anything for you? What do you think? Was it pretty easy? It's a lot of like remembering orders and doing offsets, but you can do a lot of cool designs in Silhouette Studio when you just utilize things like that. Do you guys want me to repeat anything for you? Cool. Okay, so these designs are in your order history right now. You can go make them on a shirt, whatever, anything that you want. The guide is uploaded, but I do have to make one change to it that I noticed in here. So I'm going to do that as soon as I get off of here and re-upload it. Yeah, Tasha says, now I have to get the hang of this new version. Geesh. I know, it's different, but you're going to crush it. Especially because you have the wizard as well, Tasha. So I think that this will actually be a pretty easy switch for you. When doing an offset for rhinestones, how do you determine the size of the offset? It's a lot of practice. So a rhinestone is 0.130 in diameter. And if you place it like right on the middle of the line, it kind of goes a little bit on both sides. So it's a lot of trial and error. And I did a lot of guessing. So I figured out that 0.09 gets it really, really close to your design without touching it. And then you have to do 0.160 to get two lines together. So to be honest, I probably spent a good 30 minutes just doing different offsets and converting them to rhinestones to see how the spacing was. And then I just wrote down the one that worked best for me and left it at that. So I did put both of those distances in your guide. So they're a good starting base for what you do. 9 times out of 10 it'll be fine. So you'll be able to do that. And Debbie says, so you think it's ready for us to update to version 4 for sure? Yes, little star. Version 4.0 is now stable. So they've released it to everyone. It is not in beta, which means that most of the bugs are gone. But you and I both know that software can find a bug after a month or two. So there are probably still issues that could happen. I haven't seen anything that's terrible that I've gotten mad and wanted to reinstall 3.0. So I think it's good. I would just find out. I think it's like software feedback at silhouetteamerica.com, something along those lines. You can let them know if you find a bug. the real reason why you update now and not when it's in beta, when a software version is in beta, there is no support for it. They are merely trying to like Band-Aid patch it, I guess, like find out what the problems are and then go fix it. So you will not have support in real time on how to fix these issues. When a software is released to the public in a stable version, that means that there is also support for it. So that's one thing to consider. Because it's released out to the public, yeah, I think you should go ahead and download it. Of course, there's a learning curve with it, and it's going to be a little bit different. So if you have a big order you need to get done and you're like a pro at 3.0, maybe do that order in 3.0 and then move over. But I've been working in it for a few months on my laptop. It's been really nice. I can definitely see the updates and improvements they've made since beta. So this version that we're working on now is pretty good. It's pretty stable. The only issues that I've had with it really are things where I've done customizations, and you know, you can't expect Silhouette to know every customization every person does and how to make it work. So not bad. Pretty good overall.